In this episode, I interview Ken and get his advice on starting a Dynamics 365 consulting business. This is a Dynamics 365 show focusing on the ingredients of a successful Dynamics 365 practice. Your host is Business Applications MVP, Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. If you're looking at starting a Dynamics 365 consulting business or have an established practice and would be keen to have a chat, send me a message on Twitter or LinkedIn by searching for NZ365 Guy. To review the show notes for this episode, please go to nz365guy.com/25. I would like to thank the generous contribution from our sponsor, iNorgic. Maplytics by iNorgic is a market-leading certified for Microsoft Dynamics 365 geoanalytical mapping app. Maplytics empowers users with powerful map visualization and routing capabilities within Dynamics CRM to drive better sales, improve business processes, and engage right customer at the right time. Maplytics now works with Dynamics 365 version 9 and Dynamics 365 app for mobile and tablets. iNorgic is a leading Microsoft Gold Dynamics CRM ISV, delivering best-in-class Dynamics 365 solutions, as well as cost-effective and high-quality programming services. Hi everyone, I'm here with Ken Farmer, and in this episode we're going to be looking at how to start a Dynamics 365 consulting business. As founder himself, Ken has over 17 years consulting, implementing, training and supporting companies in their CRM and technology initiatives. His passion and specialty is implementing effective solutions for small and medium-sized businesses. Ken's industry and vertical experience includes non-for-profit, hospitality, software, healthcare, service, media and manufacturing. In addition, he has integrated front and back office solutions in a wide variety of configurations. Hey Ken, welcome to the show.
Mark, thank you. Appreciate the invite.
Great. It's good to have you on here. I've met you at so many events over the past years around the world, and it's good to sit down with you and have a chat about how you established your business and your practice over the past years. So to kick off, I'd like to ask you, how did you actually end up in the consulting space with Dynamics?
Well, it was an interesting journey getting here. I actually started my work life in restaurants. From age of 18 on, I managed restaurants and bars for 20 years and loved it, absolutely loved it. But got to a point where I knew that, it was becoming a younger man's game and it wasn't what I wanted to do the rest of my life. And so I started taking Microsoft classes and became an MCSE and transitioned over to found a job starting the infrastructure practice for a Great Plains partner. And so we were a big fish in a small pond at that point and got to know the channel ins and outs and spent a bunch of time in Fargo and was lucky enough when Microsoft was coming out. They're kind of doing their pre-roadshow on CRM, their CRM product at the time. I was in a presentation and I happened to say out loud, I guess, gosh, I like that product. We should carry it. The company president was on one side of me and the owner was on the other side, and they kind of looked at each other and said, "Tag, you're it." So, I started their CRM practice and we participated actually in the beta 1 program in CRM. So it's been an interesting ride, and I just got to the point where I just fell in love with the product and the flexibility, everything that you can do, the platform itself. And while I'm not, a pure technical person, I think of myself more as a solution architect, business process guy. It's been a wonderful ride.
Wow. It's interesting. You use that phrase there, I fell in love with the product. And over the past weeks as interviewing various people, it's a common thread of the folks that are really, into the technology, if you like, and into, been doing this for years. They, like myself, has just fallen in love with it, love how, the problems it can solve, the solutions you can build from it. It's fantastic. So can you tell me about getting motivated to start your own business? What led you down that path, breaking away from your, whoever you're working for and doing your own thing?
Well, for me, I think it was it was purposeful, yet at the same time, it was almost accidental. I had a great relationship with both the owner and president. They were best friends and they had been forever for the company I was working for. And I just saw them going in a different direction than I thought was probably best for them, for the company and for the industry. But they made a conscious decision to do it, and it was their company, So I decided at that point that it was probably good for me to leave, and I left on what I think are excellent terms. I still have lunch with those guys, every once in a while, and get together with them when I can. But it was just time for me to go off and do my own thing. And I didn't start out thinking, hey, I'm going to leave here and start my own company. It was more of I'm going to leave here, let them do what they're going to do, and then I'm going to try and, figure out what I want to be when I grow up, kind of thing. And because I'd been with them for 9 years, I want to say.
Wow. Okay.
And as soon as I left, I put in my notice and gave them a month, and I would say didn't really talk to anybody about it. But 3 days later, I had a partner call me. Hey, I hear you're leaving. Do you want to come work for me? And I really didn't. And but the next statement was, well, okay, but can you help me with this, or can you help me with that? And I said, sure, I'll do that. And 6 months later, I turned around and realized that I was doing that for 3, 4, 5 different partners at the point.
Wow.
And was pretty fully booked, and had to think about setting up my contracts and my company and doing all that at that point. And after a couple of years of doing that, I finally decided it was time to do something formally, and created my current company and started hiring people, and here we are.
Wow, so you didn't sit down and write your business plan and vision statement to start with?
No, I didn't. I thought about it, and obviously since then we've done budgeting and strategizing and everything else we do quite often. But no, at the time it wasn't. It was just me leaving one company and falling into a couple of other things, and then looking up a couple of years later, realizing I had to do something serious.
Wow. Incredible. So how many years ago did you kick off officially this company then, after doing that contract?
It's been almost 8 years. So it was January of 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started out, and I was hiring staff by April, and kind of went on from there. We're still a little boutique CRM shop. We focus exclusively on Dynamics, let me get this right. Dynamics 365 customer engagement,
right.
Which is today's nomenclature. But, we focus on all the different pieces and parts around it, right? We connect up to, we do integrations, still quite a few integrations using Scribe or Kingsway Soft or something like that. And all the pieces that touch it. But I don't know how long the little boutique Dynamics 365 shop is really going to be viable. So we're making quite a few changes to adjust for this next business swing.
Mm-hmm. So why do you say that about the viability? Is it because the product is becoming so much larger, or is there other factors?
I think it's a lot of factors, actually. I try and spend quite a bit of time watching to see where Microsoft's going to zig and where they're going to zag. And, I'm not an analyst with 5,000 people behind me, an industry analyst who can, figure that out. So for us, it's really a matter of listening and going to the shows and talking to, smart, tuned in people like yourself, the MVP community, to figure out what's going on with the product and Microsoft, and then try to decide whether we want to zig when they zig and zag when they zag. But for us, I think we've really looked at the market over the last year or so, seeing the growth in the product and the addition of things like portals, field service, project service automation, and those products are not as much of an outlier as some people think they are. I think they fit into the product really well, and we love them, and we're definitely implementing them and supporting them. But when you look at what's going on, I think, with the platform, when you look at what's going on with the ERP products, on what I call the low side being Business Central, Nav, and of course the upper side with finance and operations and AX. And I really look at what I think Microsoft is trying to do and put together a marketing picture, right? There's always two pieces of Microsoft's puzzle to me. There's the platform and the technology, and then there's the marketing spin. So trying to put those pieces together, to me, it looks like, we can stay small. We're a small 7-person boutique firm is really how I describe it. But for us to truly pivot with the product, to me, there's a lot of different pieces now with our Microsoft folks are pushing Azure, of course, and Office 365, and we know them, we work with them. We don't want to be an Azure partner, we don't want to be an Office 365 partner, but at the same time, we look at things like finance and operations, and we look at even Business Central in its current iteration, and think those are solid additions to the Dynamics 365 name moniker. The customer doesn't see the difference between Dynamics 365 Business Central and Dynamics 365 for sales. They see what Microsoft is pushing, which is Dynamics 365. So for us, we're looking at that and thinking, well, we don't want to be a NAV partner. We don't want to be an AX partner, but we have some really, really strong people and friends in the channel that we can partner with. And we have spent the last 6 months formalizing those and putting ourselves in a position to be able to handle what I call the new business stack, which is everything from Business Central, obviously, all the way up to finance and operations and talent and everything in between.
Yeah, so that's interesting because you've kind of brought out the feeling that, I'm seeing across the channel, in that with Dynamics 365 becoming a single, story from a marketing perspective, there's a lot of folks that, even let's say consultants, that feel like they've got to go out and maybe train on F&O or Business Central. Do you think that's a viable model at a consultant level for them to actually pick up and, if you like, develop their same level of expertise that they have in what was formerly CRM, Dynamics 365, across now in the financial packages?
I don't. I'm a firm believer, and we've kind of run our company this way, but I'm a firm believer that you got to stay in your sweet spot. You've really got to understand what your strengths are. And I, having spent time in what was the Great Plains channel beforehand, and when Microsoft bought Great Plains, obviously the GP channel, and seeing what's going on with Business Central and A&O, to me, that's a completely different animal. And what's going on with consultative process and knowledge in the old CRM channel and experience is certainly not what is happening in F&O. It's a completely different world. It's a completely different set of skills, in my opinion. And you're talking with different people, right? You're talking with different people within an organization. So, God bless the folks who think they can do both and they're going to give it a shot. But to me, I just don't think it's an effective way to go.
Yeah, it's interestingly, I've co-pitched with other partners, with me taking the Dynamics 365 customer engagement side of things and them taking the finance side of things. And, I showed up for the demo, and there's me representing this part of the equation, and there was like 5 of them representing,
Exactly.
AX, and it's kind of like, was it AX for HR? Was it AX for managing the financials or general ledger? Was it AX for the share portfolio that they had running? Or was it inventory? Each one had a person that was an expert in those own areas. And I know there's a bit of confusion at the moment, people going, do I need a cross skill? And I kind of think of it like this, is that, if I had gone to university and become a medical student and trained to do orthopedic surgery, there's a bit of a feeling that now we're asked to turn around and learn to become a neurosurgeon,
Exactly.
Totally different discipline, totally different amount of training needed. And if I go and invest all my time in, neurosurgery, I'm going to be lost when it comes, back on the orthopedic side, because I'm going to lose touch with what's going on there. So I think it's going to create a much more level of specialty at a consultant level, even though companies might have, consultants with those multiple specialties on board.
I think you're going to even see, and I agree 100%, because, having gone through that, even at the Great Plains level, back in the day, it was the same kind of situation where you had that guy who knew manufacturing, and he was going to be handling that part of the process. And then you've got fixed assets over here, and you've got, and that's just exploded even more. And I really think that we're almost headed to that level of specialization inside the, we're both going to continue to say it, so I'll just keep saying it, the CRM, product, right? So, you've got those folks that are incredibly strong at sales and customer service process. However, is that the same person that should be doing project service automation? Is that the same person who should be running a large scale field service implementation? So I think we're really in the beginning of heading in that direction. And for us, being a smaller shop, that's okay. We've got some folks that, have really kind of glommed on to a certain specialty and they love it. I mean, I had a girl who works for me who I didn't know it when I hired her. She's a data geek. She loves data and Excel and she's an expert in that. And when Power BI came on, she came to me and I'm trying to think, well, shoot, how are we going to carry this? How are we going to market it? How are we going to, implement? She came to me and said, hey, I want to do that. I want to learn everything there is to know about it. I want to be our Power BI expert. And it was like, wow, perfect. And to me, that was, I think, the point at which I looked at it and said, it's that kind of step is going to have to happen within the consulting ranks quite a bit more than it ever has, I think, with our product.
Yeah, it's going to be more and more hard to be a generalist in this game. So tell me, when considering, building a Dynamics 365 consulting business, if there are other people on the, listening here and thinking about what that would look for them, what type of advice would you give them around, listen, you need to get these kind of 2 or 3 things right before you actually even get into the game, and not taking it back from necessarily when you started, but like knowing what you know of the market now, what would your recommendations be?
Well, I think, first of all, anybody who's thinking of doing it, who currently works perhaps with a consultancy somewhere, and they're generally people that think they're at the top of their game and they're incredibly valuable to that partner, and they wake up one morning and say, shoot, I really need to go off and do this on my own. The first thing I would probably recommend to them is go have a cup of coffee or tea, take a deep breath and think it through. Not necessarily don't do it, but think what that truly means, because somebody who starts out by themselves, like I did, there were a lot of mistakes, of course, that I made, along my route. But to me, I think, I started out as the product expert. I knew the product inside and out. I felt I had a pretty good reputation in the channel. I felt that I could really impact companies and help them, and that was great. But taking that next step beyond just being an independent contractor into actually creating a company and jumping through the hoops that you have to jump through with Microsoft and obviously all of the financial regulations and IRS rules and whatever municipality you happen to be in. That's a whole different animal. That's something that is so far away from product knowledge and expertise that you almost need a partner in that. And to me, I think that's one of the things that I probably would have changed earlier. Is I would have done it in conjunction with somebody else who had a different skill set than mine, who maybe understood the product real well, but also had a good business side. Or one of the things that I hired somebody to take care of very early was sales and marketing. I love getting in front of prospects. I love talking in a sales cycle and working with people and getting their process and I love that whole piece. But the actual day-to-day grind of sales, man, I hate that stuff. I just do. And it's funny because I'll implement a sales system, sales automation system for somebody, but actually doing that myself is just onerous. I can't deal. So having that partner, I think having somebody who has a complementary set of skills to yours that you can work with and that and you guys can sit and arm wrestle and really kind of determine where your company needs to go, I think is probably one of the keys. Going out and doing it yourself and trying to build a company by yourself in this industry, I think I think you're probably deluding yourself if you think you can do it by yourself.
Yeah, totally agree. So then how did you go about filling, if you like, your gaps, where you wanted to broaden outside your skill sets? How did you go about finding those people?
Well, I started first just looking for folks that, in the channel that I wanted to work with and maybe bring them on. And I found very quickly that as much as I loved those people, at the very beginning, I couldn't afford them. The early precursors to the MVP community and the folks that I knew. And for me, networking was key. It always has been, and getting to know a lot of people in the channel. And so I started looking at what I wanted, and I kind of related it back to when I was in the restaurant business, where in a restaurant business, you've got specialists. You've got the cooks or the chefs in the back of the house that were and I'm going to put this as delicately as I can, they were full of themselves, and they had the tendency to look at you on a busy Friday night when the place was going crazy and going, hey, I need a raise and I need it right now or I'm going to walk out the door, right? So back then I started taking the position that I needed to not hire the superstars. I needed to hire people with some of the basic skills that I felt I could mentor and I could bring up. And so that there was a lot more loyalty than there was arrogance. And so I kind of started that with looking for some people locally, first of all, that I felt had good customer service experience, that I felt had really good problem-solving skills, that may understand a little bit about the finance end of their business, but more importantly, they could take a customer situation and turn it around. And they had maybe a little technical background. So maybe they were helping to manage their networks back in the day. Maybe they were helping with, some of the office suite, and, they're one of those power users. And then, and I found somebody like that actually fairly quickly I placed an ad in, a couple of the job boards, and, I went through crazy interviews and ended up finding a gal who lived locally, had a customer service experience, and I found her through Craigslist. She answered a Craigslist ad, and she was my number one employee. She's still with me, and she's a rock star. And I brought her in, and she said, "Well, I can spell CRM, but I thought I'm starting to look for a job and another job, and I thought this would be good experience." So we went to lunch and chatted, and I just got to a point where I'm like, you know what, I can teach her CRM. The ins and outs of how to configure a sales process and how to do this and how to do that. She has the ability to learn, but she had those soft skills that I didn't think were really short-term teachable. And that's the customer service skill, the ability to listen to the customer and pull from a conversation what they really needed, not what they were saying necessarily, but what they were really needed. And those soft skills to me were the most important thing. And I've tried to keep that philosophy as I've hired more and more people. My sales guy was, a long-term salesperson. He'd actually been a friend of mine for years and years. And we implemented CRM for him and his company early on. And when I went on my own, and he kind of felt one of those things, he fell in love with CRM. He'd never sold it before, but, he was the one that I finally pulled in and said, look, you need to come in as a partner and take, a percentage of the company and just take over sales and marketing for me. And what I like to say, brought adult supervision to my sales and marketing group. So he did. And that kind of, I think, started us off on a good path. And I've been fortunate to find good people. And in some cases, my technical guy was one who had actually been in the channel working with CRM4 and was really good at problem solving. He's one of those technical guys that I can have talk to a customer and I won't be embarrassed. He's good in front of people and careful with what he says and super smart, on the technical side too. But everybody else I hired really didn't know much about the industry, but they had the soft skills, and I've been able to mentor them and work with them, and now they surpass me in a lot of different areas.
Excellent. Do you find it's easier the further you go along, the further you've developed a business over the last 8 years, that you now have, if you like, runs on the board yourself? So when you come to employing people, are they being attracted to your business? Are they feel you're a safe bet to work for? Has it kind of changed over the years how you would employ, if you needed to add another one next month? Do you think that process is quite different or evolved for you?
Absolutely. I think the early hires, Jess and Sanford and Aaron, I thanked them when they came on board for taking that leap of faith, right? You got this guy who's kind of trying to build a business and you're jumping on board with both feet and you're making a commitment. And to me, that was a huge leap of faith. And I thank them for it almost every time I see them. But now you are correct. It is different. There is a track record. We've been around as a corporate entity almost 8 years. And I think there's if they're in the channel already, they do know of us. They've heard of us. They can easily research us if they don't know that much. They can ask folks. So it is a little bit different process. I would say that I still don't necessarily look for that rock star. I mean, I would love to have a Mark Smith in my organization, but I also know that I can't afford Mark Smith, right? So it's one of those things where we look for people that we can grow into those rock stars, and then hopefully the loyalty is there and they're not going to get poached and go somewhere else.
Yeah, so true, so true. Have you had any staff go and start their own thing, as in start their own practice? No,
not
good.
at all.
That's good.
I did hire a gal for some technical work a year or so ago, and it didn't work out. And then she decided that she was going to go and do her own thing, and that failed miserably. But we've kept in touch, and she's now working for a customer, actually, not a customer of mine, but for a user, and doing pretty well. She's doing well. But I've been fortunate that the folks that I've hired, I still have my core group, I still have my original group, and they make me joyful every day.
Yeah, excellent. So how do you go about promoting your consultancy? You've said it's a boutique. I know exactly what you mean. I've had one myself. And promotion, you don't have the dollars that the big companies have, etc., for marketing packages, etc. So how do you go about promoting and getting, if you like, that engagement with potentially new customers?
Well, that's the $64 question, isn't it? That's the big piece of secret sauce that nobody can quite figure out, I don't think, in our industry. And I look at those folks that are, at least on the surface, they seem to be successful at doing that. And, I kind of watch what they're doing. And for them, it's almost a shotgun approach. And I spend a lot of time trying to analyze what other companies in our industry are doing and how they get customers and what's working for them and what doesn't work for them. I mean, we've gone through 2 or 3 different ad agencies. We've gone through marketing groups. We've even tried to hire somebody and bring somebody in-house ourselves. And all of it's just sort of had a modicum of success. It's been, a little bit here and a little bit there. And today we look at it as really trying to identify who our customer is. And we'll go through and say, we want to, for instance, we just released a medical device manufacturing solution. And so we're targeting a very small group of companies really in the Southwest, in Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona that are in this industry. And we, it's one of those things where we all of a sudden looked up and realized we had 5 of these kinds of clients. And while they each thought they were unique, we did almost the exact same thing. 90% of what we did for each one of them was the same. So we built a solution around it. So what we're trying to do is then look at that from a marketing standpoint. What does that look like? And we're doing a trade show coming up here in the fall with them, and we're doing email blasts, of course, because you almost have to. We do the social media stuff because you almost have to. But it comes down, I think, to good old-fashioned shaking hands, looking somebody in the eye. The relationships that you build, referrals are huge, I think. And so we've really kind of been most successful there. We have seen an uptake in leads coming from some of our downloadable content, as well as some of the videos that we do. So we actually are doing a series of tips and tricks, we call it Coffee with the Pros, where it's 10 to 15 minutes of just, hey, here's a interesting issue. We're going to walk you through it, or here's how to do something. And it's just really quick, very consumable. But I don't think there's one magic solution other than it's about relationships. We can buy a list and try and market to it, but by the time you get the list, 75% of it is garbage, right? And the other 25% are maybe not even decision makers. So we struggle with that like everybody else. We find that the bigger companies are just shotgunning it. They do everything and whatever sticks on the wall, and they can prove that they're 5% of spend or 8% of spend or whatever it is they're spending on marketing is some number that they can show to Microsoft that's been somewhat effective. But it's a tough one. And, for us, it really starts boiling down to relationships. We have recently, well, I shouldn't say recently because I started the company based on our relationships with partners. And and becoming the CRM practice for many ERP partners. And we've continued with that. We do less of it now than we used to do. It used to be 75% of our business, and now it's closer to 35%. But what I've tried to do in the last year or so is identify critical partners, ERP partners. We've tried it with MSPs, and it's not very effective. But we've worked with NAV partners. I found a couple of really, really good NAV partners that we like working with, and we're trying to set up go-to-market campaigns with them around the Business Central and Dynamics 365 for Sales story. And then I've identified one key AX partner who is, jumping into the cloud and going full bore into that we're working with and doing some co-marketing and going to market with same kind of story, right? From an F&O standpoint, for sales and customer service and field service. I mean, that's where we really push with them. So lately we've had some really solid success there. And for us as a company, I think that checks a lot of boxes in terms of what I see in terms of what the market's doing and the boutique shop and the things that a boutique shop like ours has to do to adjust and adapt. When I don't want an F&O practice, but we've got these awesome partners here in San Diego that we work with and we've done projects together with and we can go to market together.
Oh, so good, so good. So what do you consider your biggest barrier in your business? Do you have one? Is there something that you'd like a silver bullet for? What do you find?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to that marketing effort, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we do an excellent job. When we get an actionable lead, I think we do an excellent job of wrestling it to the ground, building the relationship and seeing, what kind of budget they may have and identifying the need and presenting them with an ROI level solution. And I think we do an excellent job there. But the challenge, of course, is filling that pipeline, right? So trying to continually successfully keep the pipeline full is, I would think, our number one challenge. From an implementation standpoint, I mean, nobody's perfect, but I think we do an outstanding job of customer success, driving our implementations not just through the initial project, but one of the things I've mentored my team on from day one is identify what Project Next is and start the conversation about Project Next yesterday. And start making sure that that's on their roadmap. And we do a lot of roadmap conversations. I would say we're extremely successful at keeping existing customers and doing a lot of projects with existing customers. And we have a fixed bid support program. And we've got that really is I don't want to say it's a loss leader, but it's there to improve touch points more than be a profit center. There's a lot of proactive things we do under that program. And so it's really comes down to building those customer relationships and, picking up the phone and calling them, hey, I haven't talked to you in a month or two. What's going on? Let's get together. Let's have lunch. Let's, do whatever. So I think we handle that really well. And I think we're going to continue to put an emphasis on that, but getting that net new, what ERP partners love to call greenfield, customers in here is, like I said, once we get the actionable lead, we're awesome. But getting that actionable lead and doing the things that we need to do, we're always talking with marketing companies. We're always talking with, we have a wonderful company that we're working with here in San Diego, but they don't know the industry. But they do our website and they do some things for us from a marketing standpoint, but they're not industry focused. We've tried some of the industry-focused marketing groups out there, and unfortunately, their industry, quote unquote, is either MSP, Azure and Office, or it's ERP. And so we've had limited success with those guys. But that's our biggest challenge, and we spend a lot of time when we sit and we do our annual big, huge strategy meeting. That we spend a lot of time talking about that and what are we going to try this year. And, I keep telling Mark, I almost don't care what the budget is if it's successful. I mean, if we're seeing actionable results, hell, let's triple the cost. Let's do what we've got to do. But sometimes it is a matter of, let's try it. Let's put a budget to it. Let's try it, see if it works. And, here's the results that we're looking for. We don't set them too high. We just want to see some good, actionable results. And if we get those, then let's continue with it.
Yeah. You mentioned there about, following up, calling with your customers, that type of thing. Is that something that you actually have a plan or a process, like we hear this term customer success manager. And I'm talking about your existing customers, do you have a model of, if you like, loving on them on an ongoing basis so they stay with you forever?
We do. I wouldn't say it's a formal process. We're not really big enough to focus on that customer success manager person. But I think those skills in our consulting group are hugely important. The consultants, I think, have to be sellers, and they have to be best friends. They have to be counselors. They have to understand the roadmap. And so once a quarter, I sit down with all of my consultants, and we go through our list of customers, old customers, new customers, projects on the board. And the only purpose of that conversation is, how's that customer doing? What's our business success health number around that customer? Are they happy? Are they ready to have what's coming up next roadmap conversation? Let's take a look at the new features and functionality that have come out in the platform that they could perhaps take advantage of that they're not. And so we do spend a lot of time internally on that. And from that conversation, depending upon the level of effort required, sometimes the consultants have a call down list, and it's not onerous, it's not huge. It's just something that's part of their job that they have to just pick up the phone and say, hey, haven't talked to you in a couple of months. What's going on? Last time we spoke, we talked about X, Y, and Z. Have you gotten to that point yet? And then we circle back around and decide, do we need a formal roadmap presentation? How do we do that moving forward? But I would say that we have a culture of customer success and nurturing those people. We've identified that all of our metrics show consistently year after year that we churn one customer a year for whatever the reason may be. And it's always weird reasons, right? But I'm very proud of that number and the fact that we can hang on to the folks that we do and continue to work with them, not just, have them on the books and say, hey, they're a customer, but we actually do spend time and we work with a lot of these customers day in and day out.
Yeah, very good. How do you handle, if you like, adaptability in the industry? So, I was just at a Microsoft event the other day here in London, and there are a bunch of people in the room, bemoaning the fact that there's no news, if you like, on the on-premise, tooling. And for me, I've seen the writing on the wall, I feel, for years. And if I was in this game and had a dynamics practice today, I would be making sure that I was, developing a team of gurus in the cloud, because, it's pretty obvious that the on-prem world is definitely not growing, put it that way. I wouldn't say it's going away, but it's not growing, and you're not going to get too many greenfield opportunities. What are your thoughts there?
Well, that's actually one of my hot buttons, Mark. I believe strongly in the cloud, and I have believed for a long time that the cloud is the only way to go. Today, we not only lead with the cloud, but we try and dissuade any new customers from going on-prem. And not just by having a couple of conversations, but we aggressively try and dissuade them from going on-prem. And we're in the middle of, 3 projects right now moving on-prem to cloud. So our what we call legacy customers, and it's funny thinking that an on-prem customer on version 2016 is considered legacy, but that's exactly how we envision it. They need to get out of their own data centers, which generally are not their own anymore. They're hosted somewhere, rack space somewhere, whatever the case may be. But we believe very strongly in the cloud is the only way to go. And to be completely honest, when I talked earlier about when I left the GP partner, that was one of the things. So this was 10 years ago. They were trying to make a decision. Do we stay with GP? Do we go with AX? And I felt very strongly that they needed to take on AX. And I also felt very strongly that they needed to get more resources geared up for the cloud. So even back then, it was something that I felt was, and like you said, we've seen those of us who've been in the channel for a while, and you're actually listening and paying attention. The writing's been on the wall for a very, very long time, and so we drive with that. We lead with that. We live in the cloud ourselves. So for those folks that as you mentioned in your meeting in London there, that are bemoaning the fact that, shoot, what are we going to do? And we're not getting the releases, to on-prem like we think we should. I can commiserate with them to a certain degree, but at some point, unfortunately, my tact goes away, and I'm like, dude, get with the program. I understand. I get what you're saying, but your future is not with that on-prem customer. Your future is if you work for a customer and you're a user, your job is to get your bosses convinced to move to the cloud. Period. And that's the way it's going. So for us, we believe that strongly. And I think it's funny to have those conversations with folks, and you see that you still have those companies that the IT department almost looks at that as their shrinking fiefdom, right? If we've got servers, even though they're virtual now, we've got servers, we've got cages in data centers, we've got all of this stuff, and it's shrinking, and by God, I'm not going to let it go. And we walked into, I want to say this was probably 9 months ago, we walked into a prospect, and they weren't an enormous company. They were probably a $30 to $50 million company, and they had an IT department of 10 people, and they had everything that was on-prem, and they still had, I think it was 6-year back version of Exchange that they were trying to run. And our first conversation in the meeting was, well, what are your plans for moving to the cloud? What are your plans for moving your email infrastructure, your Exchange infrastructure to the cloud? What are your, they were a GP part or a GP customer. What are your plans there? And the IT guy that was in the meeting, there were a couple of line of business people in the meeting, but the IT guy, the director of IT, was like, well, we don't think that's for us a viable move. And I looked, and my sales guy, Mark, my VP of sales, he just sort of hung his head a little bit because he knew I was about ready to get on my soapbox, and this was a dead deal.
Yeah.
And and it was, and I try and be tactful in that situation. But when you've got, for us, we look at that. Would there be a lot of business there for us? Yes, perhaps. But all of our on-premise customers, we struggle with their IT infrastructure. And, they're like, well, we want to, our people in the field should be able to use the mobile apps, and they should be able to, get to CRM. Well, here's the IFD, the internet facing deployment situation. And, well, can you set that up for us? And we have taken a position. The answer to that is no. We will help you, but we refuse to mess around with your Active Directory. We refuse to mess around with your firewalls. We don't want that liability and that responsibility, but we'll help you. We'll give you the directions from Microsoft, and we'll walk you through them. We'll get on a section with you, but this is your responsibility.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got off on my soapbox again.
No, that's good. I like it.
You hit one of my hot buttons, Mark. Dang it.
Hey, so apart from the technology, what part does Microsoft play in the success of your business?
Not as much as I would like. From the very beginning, I started as I mentioned, in the Great Plains channel, and they had an incredible support system for their partners. And even when Microsoft bought them, that continued for a little while. And I think I've seen, in my opinion, it drop year over year over year. We have we are a managed partner. So we have a partner development manager, whatever their current title is. And, honestly, he's awesome, but he's not a Dynamics guy. He's got some MSPs that are selling the crap out of Azure and Office licenses, and he's being wildly successful with those guys, and he really wants to help us, but his compensation, and he looks at the calculation and sees that his time is most effective monetarily working with those MSPs. And, I don't fault him with that at all. We're getting more attention from Microsoft now than we ever have. And there's some folks in the channel that, really truly do try and include us and map us into things. And God bless them. And like I said, we're getting more attention from them today than we ever have. However, the effectiveness of that sometimes is to be, let's just say, to be determined. Because we're on the small end of the partner scale, we're not the larger, Hitachis and Avanods and those guys that have 2 or 3 Microsoft people assigned to them permanently, right? We don't have a dedicated person internally to that Microsoft relationship. In partners that are, even twice our size, they have one person who's dedicated pretty much full time to the Microsoft relationship, and they need that. And I think that's what helps them maybe get to that next level. But, at our size, we can't just take one person and say, go forth and get us more from Microsoft. Anybody at this stage of the game, starting out a Microsoft partnership, who thinks that they're going to be able to live and succeed off of what Microsoft gives you, I think is delusional. Now, and I'm not trying to bag on Microsoft here. I think, they do some unbelievably incredible things. And even though I've been in the channel, I'm not a Microsoft Kool-Aid kind of guy. I mean, you know me well enough. I'm going to call them on their stuff as much as anybody, but I truly believe in a lot of the product folks, and I believe in the channel, and I believe in partnering, and those things to me are almost more important than what Microsoft thinks they're delivering to me as a partner. It's a challenge sometimes for me to all of a sudden look up and realize, hey, I was supposed to do something with Microsoft last month and they never reminded me, and now I got to go figure out what that is. And, it's just busy work and that kind of thing. But I would say that they think that they're helping quite a bit, but the smaller partner is neglected, and that's not new. It's not news, but it is something that has been, I think, almost systematic for quite some time.
Yeah. No, I think I think you're on par there. So before we get into some quickfire questions, Ken, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I mean, one of the things that we look to as a small partner or as somebody who's been in the channel for quite some time, and this is just, my personal opinion is, the job that you guys do in the MVP community is phenomenal. We look to you guys quite a bit, and we don't sit on every Microsoft panel or board or NDA program that they've got, but we look to you guys to help communicate that information to us. And we seriously get more actionable information from the MVP community than we do from Microsoft in most cases. And I just want to take the time to thank you and all of our other friends in the community that work tirelessly for that. And, I think it's a huge part of what we use and what we leverage to try and be successful.
Excellent. Thank you, Ken. On behalf of the MVPs, I'm sure pleased they'll to hear that from you. So to look at some quickfires. So what books, blogs, and podcasts do you recommend most to people that work in Dynamics, and why?
Wow. It's tough keeping up because the information is so broad. The PFE, the field group, I try and follow their blog as much as I can, but they don't communicate as much as I would like. A lot of the MVPs, their blogs, I think, are rock solid. And honestly, I don't necessarily subscribe or use an RSS feed or anything else like that. But I will get on social media and I'll see different things that are listed. And that's usually how I pick up based on the folks that I follow and social media drives a lot of that for me, and then I communicate that to my staff. And we use Microsoft Teams, and we have a special channel that's just for, hey, good blog posts we've seen lately, and we post them in there for the team so that, it's a little bit more organized than just, hey, everybody go out on social media and try and find, what's going on. So I would say that the podcasts, I truly enjoy your podcast. I enjoy Gus's, Joel sometimes, he's sometimes a little bit more technical. But for me, a podcast is tough because I don't commute. I don't have a big hairy commute where I'm, on a train or, in the car for an hour. So for me to take time out of my day to just sit and listen to an hour-long podcast is a challenge. When I do it, I love it. But, maybe it's, I've tried recently doing it while I'm out walking the dogs or something like that. That helps quite a bit. But then I find that I want to take notes, and if I'm out walking the dog, then I can't take the notes, and Mr. Memory is not my friend. But I would say that those, for the most part, are what I try to do. Books that I'm reading, I mean, I focus on, I used to read all of the CRM books that used to come out and the CRM Bible and this and that. But today it's, the product changes so fast that I don't know how people can even think about writing a book on a certain version. It's kind of crazy.
Exactly.
But mostly the books I'm reading and try to read are business books.
So just picked up what business book?
Well, I just picked up one that I read quite a while ago from Jim Collins called Good to Great, and talking about how to get your company, no matter the size, but get your company to that next level, right? And one of the analogies that he uses often that I've used ever since I read the book, 10, 12, 15 years ago was, get the right people on the bus and get the right people off the bus, and make that decision as early as you can. We have a policy here that, obviously, like most companies, you're on a 90-day probationary period when you start. And luckily, I've only had to do it twice, but in this company at least, where you just realize within the first month, this person's not going to work out. So cut the cord now, deal with the fallout, and move on, and just make the decision. If it's not technical, it's the right personality and culture fit, then make the change.
Yeah, so good, so good. What's your favorite app and why?
Oh Lord, I'm a geek. I love gadgets. My philosophy is I need to be able to run my business from my phone. So, obviously all the Microsoft apps I use quite a bit. I'm loving the Teams app. We've been using it now since it came out. I like it better now than I did a year ago, but and I like some of the new things that are coming out. We just started, actually, you helped this conversation when I saw you last, and a couple of the other MVPs around VSTS. So, we're working with that and the connections between VSTS and Teams. We're really starting to explore that. I use Twitter a lot. I'm on Twitter. It's sort of the angry world of Twitter is what I kind of look at it now. But there's a lot of information. If you can sift through the garbage and the yelling and the screaming, there's quite a bit of information. For our industry, I think there's an incredible amount of information. And everybody always talks about, we talked about marketing. And sorry, I'm going to get off on a little tangent here, but everybody says, well, you have to have a presence. Every marketing company, hey, what's your Twitter presence? And what do you do here? And what do you do there? My feeling in our industry, Twitter is there for the insiders. Twitter is there for the partners, for the MVPs, for the people in the community. And as long as you look at it that way and use it that way, I think it's a very effective medium. But if you're trying to base your marketing program in our industry around Twitter, I think you're going to fail, right?
You're dreaming. Yep.
And then lately, just to throw in LinkedIn, we've been LinkedIn fans for a long time, and we were actually a little concerned about the Microsoft purchase and what that was going to do, but
it's worked out well.
Yeah, it's worked out very well, and we're really pleased with what we are reading is coming out.
Nice. What's the best purchase you've made under $100?
Ooh, under $100.
Mm-hmm.
Under
gadget.
$100. Have I purchased a gadget under $100?
It's not really possible these days, is it?
I would say probably is. I've got a couple of these Bluetooth speakers that I use religiously, whether I'm using it with my laptop or with Alexa or whatever. And I've been pleasantly surprised that for $40 you get this unbelievable little portable unit that's got
totally
incredible sound. I'm blown away at that. And then sometimes the battery chargers that I buy, the little backup battery things that I just stick in my bag, and I use those constantly.
Nice.
I would say all of my gadget purchases that I fall in love with are more than $100, unfortunately.
Agreed. Ken, who do you recommend as a guest for the podcast in future?
Wow. I was listening to your podcast, by the way, with Krista, which was awesome. She was phenomenal. And you asked her that question. And I thought, God, I hope he doesn't ask me that, because I can't think of anybody. Obviously, the MVP community, you talk to those guys a lot. You have them on. I would almost suggest, maybe an ERP partner, and talking to them about their thought process behind what are you going to do? If you're a GP partner, what is your plan to get to the cloud? What do you think Microsoft's going to be able to do for you moving forward? I know a lot of GP partners that have given up. that are taking on other products. Maybe they've even taken on NetSuite, something like that is in the cloud. But they've gotten to a point where they gave up on Microsoft, and they still do an incredible amount of GP existing business and their renewals, but they're not doing a lot of new sales. So I would almost think you start talking to some of these other people in the channel besides our industry, they've had some of the same experiences and some of the same challenges building a practice, but almost from a different perspective. Sorry, that was a lame answer, but that's kind of the best I can come up with.
That's good. Ken, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Before you go, if people want to follow you online, where can they find you?
Well, our company website, Dyn365pros.com, is a good place. That's where we put all of our blogs. I don't do my blogs separately. We kind of lump them all up there together as a company. I'm on Twitter, kfarmer4444 is my personal Twitter, which is full of things not just CRM, but CRM as well. And then our company Twitter, Dyn365pros, is active there too. And then, of course, LinkedIn.
You've been listening to the Dynamics 365 show. Please consider subscribing to our feed on any great podcast player. Your host was Business Applications MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. For show notes or to discuss anything covered on this show, please go to nz365guy.com/25. See you soon.